Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a health crisis that doesn't just start in some far-off lab, but can actually begin right in our own homes. We're talking about the misuse of antibiotics, and we're going to break down a really fascinating study that shows how a single choice a parent makes today could literally change the future of medicine.
Let's kick things off with just one number, 10 million. It's a huge, almost hard-to-imagine figure.
But this isn't some abstract statistic. According to the World Health Organization, 10 million is the number of people projected to die from antimicrobial resistance every single year by 2030. To put that in perspective, that's more people than currently die from cancer each year. This is a silent pandemic, and it's building steam right under our noses.
So what are we even talking about here? What is AMR, or as you've probably heard it called, the rise of superbugs? Well, think of it like evolution on hyperspeed. Every time we use an antibiotic, a few of the toughest bacteria might survive. Those survivors then multiply, passing on their drug-resistant genes. Over time, our best medicines just stop working, even against things like a simple scrape or a sore throat.
So how on earth did we get here? To really understand the scale of this threat, we have to take a hard look at how our own behavior has been fueling the fire.
A massive driver of this crisis is, well, us. Between just the years 2000 and 2015, global antibiotic use shot up by 65%. Every single pill adds to the pressure, weeding out the weak bacteria and leaving only the strongest to survive. We're essentially training our enemies to defeat our best weapons.
This huge global problem is really built on millions of tiny individual decisions. So to see how this plays out, we're going to zoom in, way in, from that global view to a specific place the WHO considers a hotspot for this crisis, Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh.
A recent study in the journal Scientific Reports wanted to get right to the heart of the matter. And instead of looking at hospitals or drug companies, they focused on a group we can all relate to. They zeroed in on parents, the people on the front lines making those urgent, sometimes panic decisions when their kids get sick.
So here's a quick look at how they did it. Researchers surveyed over 700 parents of school kids in Dhaka. Their goal was to measure three things: what parents knew about antibiotics, what their attitude or beliefs were, and finally, what they actually did when it came time to give their child medicine.
And this is where the story gets really complicated, because what the researchers found was this massive, troubling gap. A deep disconnect between what parents knew was the right thing to do and what they actually did under pressure.
Okay, so first things first. The researchers had to figure out what the baseline was. Do parents even get what these powerful drugs are for? What was their actual level of understanding?
Well, the results were pretty concerning. Only about 17% of parents had what the researchers would call a good level of knowledge. The vast majority, a whopping 83% combined, were either in the moderate or poor category. For example, a lot of them couldn't even identify a super common antibiotic like amoxicillin.
And this slide right here illustrates the core problem. Get this, 3/4 of the parents knew that misusing antibiotics could lead to resistance. They understood the danger in theory, and yet, in practice, nearly 2/3 of those same parents were misusing them. Knowing wasn't enough to change what they did.
The study's authors called this exactly what it is, a serious public health concern. And it's not just about Bangladesh. This gap between knowing the risk and taking the risk anyway, that's a human story, and it plays out in families everywhere.
So, what does this misuse actually look like on the ground? This next number reveals the most common and maybe the most dangerous practice of all.
58%. Just let that sink in for a second. More than half of the parents in this study admitted to giving their children these powerful prescription-only drugs without any guidance from a doctor. They were just making the call themselves.
And that self-prescribing led to some really predictable patterns. They were using antibiotics for things they just don't work on, like viral coughs and colds. Even worse, many parents, about 1/4 of them, stopped the medicine as soon as their child felt a little better, which is pretty much the perfect recipe for creating superbugs.
So, if that's the problem, this mix of spotty knowledge and that huge gap between awareness and action, what's the solution? How do we even start to fix something like this?
Well, there's no single magic bullet. The researchers proposed a strategy that really has to attack the problem from every single angle. It starts with big public education campaigns, but it also needs stricter laws to stop pharmacies from just handing out antibiotics over the counter. And it needs better training for doctors so they can communicate more effectively with worried parents.
It requires a total system overhaul.
You know, the key takeaway here is that what's happening in Dhaka, it's a microcosm of a global issue. The pressures that parents feel, that desire to make their child feel better right now, the easy access to medicine, the communication gaps with doctors, these are universal challenges. The lessons from this one study are really a warning for all of us.
And this leaves us with a final, crucial question we all have to consider in our own lives. We act out of love, out of a desire to heal. But this study forces us to ask, is our immediate rush to medicate actually creating a world where, down the road, we won't be able to protect them at all? It's a tough question, but one we all need to answer.